getting in the mood. We're getting in the mood. Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, you're all crafting. This is perfect. I am Jen, and I am head of marketing for Making, which is the very first social marketplace app for makers, crafters, and artists by makers, crafters, and artists. And, we have some unknown people on the stage next to me, so I'm going to have to introduce them in a second. But we are going to be talking about how to adapt to an evolving world of fiber art and craft. This is a topic that we talk a lot about at Making, and actually came up a lot at the booth this weekend. We've been sharing a booth with Brooklyn General and doing some podcasting interviews, and we've all seen things changing lately, so let's talk about it. All right, I have to intro these people because you don't know who they are. So here at the end, we're gonna start with the keynote speaker, Aimée Gille. Aimée creates yarn, designs, and is author of 2 beautiful books. She can normally be found in Paris with her family, traveling the world, or as a guest on our podcast, Making Conversation, because we've been so lucky that you are our most repeated guest. So thank you. Next to Aimée, we have Jonna Helin, and I finally had the pleasure of meeting you. Jonna is the co-founder, creative director, and CEO of Laine Publishing and the editor-in-chief of Laine Magazine. And we also discovered that we both have hand tattoos in the same font, and together we are Handmade Daddy. And of course, Locatelli, knitwear designer, mom, podcaster living in Buenos Aires, and of course, last year's VKL keynote speaker. Hi you. Yousling. Ashley is the CEO and founder of Making, the very first social marketplace for makers, crafters, and artists, makingco.com. I have to do my job, Also a crafter, a mother, and a best friend. Let's get into it. We only have 30 minutes. So if you have follow-up questions, because we don't have a lot of time, feel free to find me on the Making app and send me a DM. You can also find me on Instagram or send me an email, jen@makingco.com. So you can find me at knitpearl in all of the places, and I won't have to spell that for any of you, so that's great. Let's get into it. In your part of the industry, what are some ways that you feel things have changed over the last few years?
I get to go first?
Yes.
I have been in this industry since 2008. I started out as a yarn shop owner, selling other people's yarns, to transitioning to making my own yarn brand. And when I started out making my own yarn, I felt quite alone. I didn't know how to do anything. When I would ask people for advice, I got doors shut, people wouldn't respond to me, and so I figured I'm gonna pay it forward. If someone asks me, how do you do this? Can you help me? I've decided that I would say, yes, I will help you, and here's how you do it. So I've seen a transition towards this now. I've been dyeing yarn for 9 years, and I feel like we have recently kind of come into this moment where we're all opening our thoughts and our minds, and we're sharing information with each other, and actually communicating in a more open way.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think the world is getting harder. It's harder to make business, and unless you work and cooperate, it's quite hard to exist. And if I think publishing industry, for instance, so COVID, of course, as horrible as it was, it kind of treated the whole crafting business well. And since then, plenty of things have happened. And when I think of publishing books, it's our pride to actually print books, paper books. So the paper price, for instance, during the past 18 months, it has gone up by 80%, which means well, it has been a struggle, and it has From us, it has demanded that we read things very differently, and we haven't wanted to increase the price, nor to our stockists, wholesalers, or customers. So what we've done, we've taken the hit and trying to find other mechanisms to survive. Of course, one is to cooperate and remain and retain good relationships with so many people as possible. And and for us, one way to survive has been to try to produce more. But the paper price increase has only been like one of the factors. Of course, at one point, like less than a year ago, there was a huge shortage on paper, and sometimes we had to wait weeks, sometimes even months, to get the right paper that we wanted. And then not to mention shipping costs that have gone up at least by 40%. And inflation, people clearly, it's very visible, at least to Europeans at the moment, and I think to everyone, that we don't have that much money to spend anymore. So it's harder to make business, but then again, even though it's hard, it gives great joy to, share this situation with fellow knitters, fellow companies. Yeah.
So my side of the industry is pattern writing and self-publishing. The biggest change that I noticed in the past few years, and probably at the same time with COVID, was a noticeable shift in the way knitters want to learn. How they want to learn to knit, and how they want to live the experience of knitting a pattern. I haven't yet adapted completely to this change, but that doesn't mean that I haven't noticed it. I have noticed a bigger demand of video support that I don't offer for my patterns. My patterns have a PDF format, have always been the same format. I rely on the confidence that my business always reaches my customer base. So I'm not going to say that I'm not actively looking for new business, but I don't have that worry. I am very interested in taking care of my already existing customer base and catering to what they are looking for. But of course, as business people, we should always be observant of what the community wants. After COVID, I noticed that a lot of people learned to knit during this time, and so they got used to a lot of videos, a lot of tutorials, a lot of designers who actually offer segments explaining a technique and a little bit more hand-holding than just the written format that I am used to. And it's understandable. It's like when our kids started going to school with online learning, and then suddenly online learning becomes such an important part of their education, right? So I think that the same happened with knitters. I'm trying to see how I could incorporate this new demand or this new need in a way that doesn't overwhelm me, that it's useful without changing what I like to do. I like to knit and write, and I like to communicate in written form, but I also feel like if we don't pay attention to what people are actually needing and looking for, then we're just losing out on customers and fellow knitters opportunities.
Super quick, because I know we have a lot to talk about, but when it comes to pattern writing, we just had an episode on the podcast where we talked all about pricing, and you're seeing more content be delivered with these patterns. How do you think we as a community that purchases these patterns can support these designers who should probably be raising their prices if they're creating extra content?
Yes, that is a complicated topic. I always say that if you reach more people, you can sell better a product that takes only a certain amount of time to make, right? So if your product is really excellent, if your product is really flawless, appealing, hip, I don't know, something that people really want to make, then more people will buy this pattern, and then you, with the same effort, you will have more income. This is not a topic that is only relevant for pattern writing, it's relevant for any product. Not always raising your product price leads to more income. Sometimes you have to find the perfect balance. Perhaps you think that, okay, I normally sell 10 copies of this pattern, and so I should raise my prices because my minimum income should be whatever. But then you lose those 10 sales, and then you have less income. So I am not probably the person who needs to talk about pattern pricing, because I think that it has to do with your audience, and that is different for each pattern designer. It has to do with what you need, like how much time it takes me versus how much time it takes any of all the other designers here, right? We all have different times, and maybe someone can put out 2 patterns a month, and some other can put only 2 patterns a year. I do think that as designers, we need to make our product have a good value. I don't believe that we should, just give away our work because who cares? We're not making something valuable enough. Yes, I am a big defender of getting paid what is fair, and I have had my patterns for sale ever since I designed something that I thought other knitters would want to make. But at the same time, I think it's a very complex topic that has to do with economy, and that is not my forte.
Well, much like Jonna, Making started as a podcast and a magazine almost 10 years ago. And I think through COVID, we experienced the same thing. And I looked at what we were doing and the business and kind of where the industry was going and where we wanted to be in the industry, and realized that while we love print, we love magazines, it was an exceptionally hard decision to not do that anymore. We realized that what we wanted to do was be a part of a different part of the industry. And my background, thankfully, I have been in tech for 15 years, running product for different companies, large and small, at startups, and felt really comfortable kind of taking off on that new direction for making. And what the idea for Making App came actually back in like 2013. And I, over the last 7 years of doing the magazine, considered it like user research and kind of seeing like what is it that makers want? What is it that, the industry, the direction that it's going in, and how we can adapt and change. And that is the biggest thing that came out of the last 4 years for us, was when you're faced with challenges, whether it's COVID, whether it's personal hardship, whatever it is, your ability to adapt and change is how you're going to survive, and your acceptance of it, I think too, because the acceptance of it is how you continue to find joy in what you're doing, because you're actually going through. It's really hard. It's really hard what's happened the last 4 years. But let's not even say the last 4 years. Let's say just like however long we've been in business. Business is hard. And we have to often find the joy ourselves, even though coming to places like this and, communicating with customers and creating the product brings us joy. It's very lonely. And funny enough, we've all had conversations this weekend and how it is lonely. It does feel lonely. And sometimes you feel like you are kind of in this silo doing what you do, and even though we're all friends, it's like, how do you know that they can relate to something that you're going through? But that goes back to being seen, which is something that I talk a lot about within crafting, within kind of just humanity. Our biggest desire is to have belonging and be seen. And as makers, I think that's how we all find that in our lives, because we all can relate on kind of that common ground. And so coming back to change. That is, I think that's the most important thing, is just recognizing that, accepting it and adapting and trying to find joy in it. And that comes through connection with other people.
I love that. Imagine working with her every day. I clap a lot. Okay. So you are all experts in each of your fields. That's why you're sitting here. And you have your ear to the ground. What are some areas in the industry that are ripe with opportunity?
It's me again?
Yeah.
We can switch it up if you want.
No, it's good. I think there's a huge opportunity to collaborate. This is something that I really, really want to do all the time. Within my own company, we collaborate between departments, we cross-train. So I have people who work in post and pre-production for dyeing the yarn who know how to work on my sales team. I have my support team who knows how to go downstairs and do yarn prep, tagging. In French we call that being polyvalent. I guess the equivalent of multitasking. And I want to apply this beyond my business, and I want to work with designers, especially like in the collaborative books that I've written. I want to bring designers together who may not know each other and collaborate them, give them opportunities to know each other, use my yarn, and push them forward. I think, yeah, that's for me, the number one is collaboration.
Yeah, I totally agree with Aimée that unless there wasn't any collaboration, none of us wouldn't probably exist. Then that what I keep often hearing, and here too when I've been standing at our booth, so people come to me and they are rather surprised that the knitting companies, we really collaborate. We do business together. Quite a few, I have never felt any competition. I don't want to compete. I feel I've always felt that the more people come into this wonderful world of knitting, crafting, the more we all benefit from it. Whether it's financial beneficial, benefit financially, but mostly like mentally, making friends, making something far more important. But if I think publishing, what is like what I need to be searching for like in year 2024. So maybe AI is one of the biggest things that
AI.
Yeah, that we really need to, that we have to embrace it. We can't take it that it's a no-no. We really need to embrace, because technique is here to help us, and once we get for instance, our work process is more fluent, then it gives us more time to actually create, to offer you something, I don't know, more fun, more functionable, more something. But I think it's a mentality for instance, in my business and in my company, that grab the opportunities. Don't think that things are challenges. They are, or obstacles. They are, my motto has always been, how hard can it be? You find your solutions.
Yeah, Jonna and I and Ashley yesterday, we've been talking about this. I have zero knowledge of AI. I do have had some experience with it. I use it for some parts of my work, especially GPT, for like bouncing off ideas or brainstorming in a more efficient way, especially. So I'm basically talking to myself and like hearing back what I'm telling GPT, but in a different way. I'm like, wow, that's really clever. I've been reading and hearing a lot of good things and bad things about AI, especially in our creative world. it's kind of fear, because we know that there's a lot of theft of the work from artists, and that is obviously because it's been taken to train these AI motors, and yeah, I don't know enough to say something clever about it, but I know it's controversial. But what I do want to say is that there is a fantastic way to use AI in which, as Jonna said, helps us work in a more efficient and creative way with our own intelligence, with our own features, with our own ideas, with our own style. And I am sure that that there's some way in which I can incorporate AI to my design, maybe to streamline some parts of the grading process by teaching some software how I do it or how I want it done. Of course, supervising results, but I mean, wouldn't it be amazing? We know that there's currently no software that can, I know no software can replace my brain, at least the way I grade. There's no such thing. But what if I could train a software to do what I do, or to do something else, some new original idea that I have? I just think that this is something that is here to stay in the world, and that if I want to be ahead and have, you know, embrace the opportunities, that's something that I need to be looking forward to.
Yes to all that. I was actually thinking maybe that's one of our follow-up topics that we talk about, is specifically AI in process. I won't go too deeply into it here, but last year I worked for a while with a company that had 40 portfolio startups. And one of my key parts of my job was integrating AI into workflow processes to create like efficiency and in ways that aren't replicating creativity or taking the innovation or ingenuity out of what we do, but actually optimizing it so that, you know, the pricing conversation that we were having, if you can do what you're doing faster, better, you know, create an economy of scale through something like that, we shouldn't be afraid of it. But I think that that's a really big topic, and AI is kind of lumped together as one kind of name, but AI is actually a lot of things, and there's many different types and ways to use it. And so I think that yeah, is a great follow-up question. But there's two things that I think there's opportunity in the industry. I think there's many, but kind of going from like a high level. The first one is children in art. And this kind of has to do with AI. So over the last, I'm not gonna fact check here, but over the last, you know, ever since the Industrial Revolution, there's been a push in schools towards working on STEM, like specifically STEM related topics, and they have taken art out of schools. Many public schools do not have funded art programs, and so the art programs that we grew up with in school no longer exist in school. And thankfully, there are some amazing champions that have gone into schools in many different places and created art programs. But what has happened is that art is not accessible to kids, and I will also not name names, but some of the biggest billionaires that fund some of the most companies in the world recently got together and had a conversation that the one thing that AI will never replicate is our creative footprint, the fingerprint that we put on, and the thing that it can't replace, your brain. And so there's a crisis that we are going to face, I believe, with AI, where it's going to create so much efficiency, but we've trained this machine of school and education with kids where they do not have the opportunity to foster that creativity, to then have a launching point into something that is uniquely them as they get older. And so I think a huge place for opportunity, and this is not something we're necessarily tackling, but I just want people to think about and see, like locally in their schools, can they go teach knitting? Like I started teaching knitting at my kids' school, and I'm really grateful to have the art teacher at the school become one of my really close friends of mine. And we talk a lot about this. And so is there opportunity in your business to create some sort of tools for parents who don't feel like artists, don't feel like makers, to kind of create this you know, foster this artistic environment with their kids or have that, because art, as we all know, is therapy. Making is therapy, and kids need that, especially after what we've gone through, you know, this last 4 years. So that's my soapbox on that. If there's anything you can do to help, like not going after the adult crafters, but creating environments that foster creativity for kids, that's number one. And the number two is, I think, acceptance. Globally, in all the different spaces that we are, it's really important to have an attitude of acceptance to one another. We don't know what each other's going through. And when you were talking about collaborating, when I hear that, what I hear is allowing yourself to be seen and seeing other people so that there's space and freedom to collaborate. And so acceptance of, and not blocking yourself off, you know, I think it's really important because we are all different and we may feel differently about each other, and many of us only know each other from online. But that is not who we really are. And so getting to know one another, being vulnerable and kind of putting yourself out there, that is actually the foundation to be able to do all the things that we've talked about, which is collaborate and connect and stuff like that.
What would be your biggest piece of advice for businesses of all sizes that might be facing challenges?
My first advice is be true to yourself. Do what you love, because as Holly said, there's no one replacing your brain. I feel there's no one who can replace, in a way, my brain. So I need to do things or, you know, trust my instincts. And the other one, I just had it in my mind, and then, you know.
You don't want to go?
Yes, again, maybe it comes back to me.
Well, you think. So I thought about this, and I've actually been facing some creative challenges lately, and I didn't know what to do, I didn't know who to go to, and I talked to my friends about this, and I've been working with a life coach lately, and it has really helped me. And I think that the most important thing that I talked to him about was, like eye-opening, was set a goal. What is your goal? Like one goal, you know, an achievable goal. I don't know if you have heard of SMART goals, but a SMART goal. And I think that many of us, when we have our businesses for some time and get into a groove, and you know, we do well, we work, you know, we keep pushing forward, but you know, we're on that train. Sometimes we lose focus and we don't know where we want that train to go. And sometimes, you know, it doesn't mean that it has to be, that it doesn't mean that it will happen as soon as you visualize it, right? But when you visualize where you're going to and what your goal is, then it's easier to take steps to that. So that would be my good advice. That didn't come from my brain, but from my coach.
And that is what I meant to say, that business, because you know, you constantly, as a creative person, you get these ideas. You could do this, you could do that, you could do that and that and that. But the main thing is to stay focused and concentrate and realize that you can't do all of these things at the same time, that you need to have the patience. This idea, which is a good idea, I might have time to work on that idea in 3 years, but not now. Setting up goals which are achievable at the moment, but never ever stop dreaming and dream big.
Lately I've been thinking I want to do everything and nothing at the same time. And I've recently figured out why I've been feeling like this is because I don't set boundaries for myself. I work a lot. During my keynote speech, I told that I would work 7 days a week. So I started setting new rules for myself. I don't work on the weekends. I don't take my computer home. After I got back from tour, I also decided that I'm not going to go into the office every day. I'm going to work 2 days from home, 3 days in the office. and I set boundaries for myself and all of my collaborators that work with me. I come to work on Wednesday, my first day back in the office. It is called a no appointment day. That means nobody gets to set an appointment with me because I'm coming back into my office to work, to have unstructured time for myself so I can find my creativity again. So I think the most important thing is to set boundaries for yourself and to be able to say no to yourself and say like, no, you're doing too much. And that's been really helpful for me.
Yes. So we had a conversation about this actually, and so I think challenges come in lots of different forms. There can be like financial challenges, there can be personal challenges like creativity, logistical, all that. And so there's a lot of different approaches, and I think we all could probably speak equally on each of those topics for a long time. But, Aimée, when you and I had a conversation, I don't know, quite a while ago, where you mentioned that to me. And I remember walking away from that and saying, you know what, Mondays are mine now. I'm taking Mondays back. And historically, I never liked Mondays because you had to kind of hit the ground running, but being able to kind of create that space, create that boundary, if you can, is really great. So I just wanted to echo that. But I think when you face a challenge, I think the number one thing that I always go to is thinking about where my heart is at first. And sometimes it might not be in the thing that I'm doing anymore. And so I think the first thing is stepping back and being okay with saying, this isn't the thing that I want to do anymore, or I don't want to do it this way anymore. And that's a really scary thing to face. But I do think that's part of creating boundaries. It's part of stepping back and kind of looking at like what you're doing and deciding, okay, is this still true to who I am? Do I want to continue forward? And that's aligned with when you were talking about goals. Is this something I still want to do? Yes, like assign a goal to it and go after that. But the second thing is therapy. And you're talking about life coach, and I think a lot of life coaches can kind of edge on therapists as well. I can't speak even enough of what therapy has done in my life. And it's not just about, working through things. Often it's about feeling seen in those lonely times. And so I'll follow that up with find someone to talk to, find someone so that you're not alone as you go through challenges, and that you can feel vulnerable with. And so, I don't know, there's been a common thread of what I've been saying, but that really comes from my personal experience.
We are in such a heart-led industry. Britt said that in one of the podcasts, so I will not bad Britt and taking your words and reusing them, but as makers, we put so much love into each stitch. And as business owners, it's that times, I don't know how many, big a number, right? So having the North Star and always going back to it, but also giving back to yourself is so important. So I'm so glad that you are all here. Thank you so much. And thank you all. If you have any follow-up questions, or you would like some of these lovely people to chat about a certain topic on our podcast, send me an email, jen@makingco.com, or find me on Instagram or the Making app at KnitPearl. And thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the time here at Vogue Knitting Live.
Thank you, everybody.